I marked at the beginning, I thought that this was important and spoke to me. Let me just get my notes before I go off. Hi everyone, it's me, Jess. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome to another video. Finally, I feel like I'm going to be able to get back into the swing of filming videos. It's been a while since I did a recent reads video or a video where I talk about books that I've read, and it's long overdue. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to be talking about 5 books that I have read, some more recently than others. Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about these books today with you. It's been a while. I'm going to start out with 2 books that were on the Carol Shields Prize long list. One of them I began reading back when I filmed my last vlog. In fact, 2 of the books I'm going to talk about today were books that I was reading for that vlog. I will leave the reading vlog linked in the description box below. I do talk about these books and the experience of reading them in the vlog a little bit, but I never talked about them in a wrap-up. So yeah, one of the books that was in that vlog, which I started in the vlog but didn't finish, is one that I'm going to start out with. It's Pale Shadows by Dominique Fortier, translated by Rhonda Mullins. I guess I could have read this book in French if I wanted to, but I found the translation was so good. Part of the reason that I really enjoy this book is because of the writing. The writing was very beautiful, very poetic, which is incredible because it is an homage to Emily Dickinson's poetry. This story is about actually 4 women, well, 3 women and 1 girl. The women, in particular, 2 characters, Emily Dickinson's sister, Lavinia, and her brother, Austen's mistress, Mabel, come together to publish what were poems that Lavinia found of Dickinson's after she died. And that's the basis of the plot of the story. Different things happen to these women. Austen's wife, Susan, is another main character in the story. So her relationship to Austen and her relationship to Mabel and Lavinia, eventually she ends up finding kind of a new lease on life, which is a wonderful and unexpected turn in the plot that I didn't see coming. And we also have Millicent, Mabel's young daughter, who plays a part in the story as well. And it's just this wonderful book that really explores the whole notion of how do you do justice to someone's work who is not there anymore to present it to the world. And the women, especially Lavinia, has this very strong drive to make sure that the poems are published. And she asks Mabel to help her with the publisher to put together the poems in a way that would represent Emily and her poems in a way that would be authentic. And there's this pull and push between the publisher and the women. He wants to add all kinds of punctuation. The poems themselves are written, with endings in the margins and up the side, and they're often written in bursts without a lot of specific organization to them, and the editor wants to put them together, the publisher wants to put them together in a way that's more organized and more acceptable, and the women go back and forth on this. Ultimately, it's a reflection too of Emily as an artist and as a poet. There are a lot of descriptions of Millicent especially goes off into nature, and there are a lot of descriptions of her relationship to nature, and there are some musings about women at that time and what their roles were, particularly for Mabel, who wants more from her life than to just be this man's mistress. It's a really surprising little novel. So the story is told through the perspectives of the different women and the way that their lives interact, as well as their own stories. In particular, Mabel, Susan, and Lavinia. The writing is absolutely gorgeous in this novel. This passage that I marked that I'm going to read to you in the beginning really spoke to me. Lavinia Dickinson is cut from the same cloth as Max Brod, who chose to ignore the last express wishes of his friend Kafka, who had made him promise to throw his papers into the fire without reading them. As Otto Frank, who resolved to make public the diary of his daughter, who died in Bergen-Belsen, Lavinia is one of the rare authors of chance to whom we owe gratitude for the monumental works they did not write. Like I said, it is a theme throughout the book, where the idea of how to publish her poems and how to honor her sister is really important to Lavinia. This is another passage that I marked that helps to describe this. And it's at a point where she's meeting with Higginson, who is the publisher, and Mabel, to talk about how the poems should be published. Lavinia suddenly feels exhausted. She would like to say that, from what she understands, her sister's poetry is the opposite of correct, that it belongs in the realm of the error, of that which does not appear in textbooks or dictionaries, that it resides quite apart from the usual, the expected, that the poetry lives in that surprise, that it is built from astonishment like the hive is built from honey. Emily's poems are the opposite of straight line, labyrinth, bee's flight, at the same time as they go straight to their mark, like an arrow to its target, that they are at once the arrow, the target, the hand that shoots, and the air split by the steel tip. This book is wonderful. I really loved it. And if you haven't had a chance to read this one, I would recommend it. I'm going to try to find the prequel to this. Yes. So it's short but beautiful, this book, and I'm really glad that I read it. And I would not have known about it if it wasn't for the Carol Shields Prize long list. The next book was a book that was chosen for our book club. I'd been meaning to read this book for so long, actually since last summer. I can't remember how many different lists it was included on, but it was included for sure on the Carol Shields Prize long list, and that is Creation Lake by Rachel Kushner. It was listed for the Booker Prize as well last year. So many of you will have already heard about Creation Lake from a lot of other booktubers. And God forbid I repeat anything any other booktuber has said on this channel. I would really hope that I would not do that. But you know, booktube can be a little bit cultish. We all watch each other's videos. And anyway, I will do my best to simply give you my impressions. I really enjoyed this book. I know that it had very mixed responses from different people around booktube, and for sure, and I wasn't there for my book club meeting, but I know that a lot of people in my book club did not like this book at all. I don't know what their reasons were, unfortunately, because I wasn't there for the meeting, but I'd heard secondhand that they didn't like it. I just really got into the narrative voice of Sadie Smith, who is this kind of terrible person. It's her first-person narrative from which the story is told. She's working as a freelance sort of spy or agent, and she formerly worked, I think, for the government, and she was formerly officially a spy, and now she's working freelance. But we don't know anything about her employer, and we don't know really what the goals are exactly of her mission. Basically, she is infiltrating this rural kind of commune in rural France. I think it's in the south of France, and part of what they're trying to do is to stop big agro-business and that kind of exploitation. The founder of the commune is a man named Bruno Lacombe. Most of his ideas and the foundation of his philosophy for the commune, or the way that people should be living, is that people should revert to the way we lived during the time of the Neanderthals. He's basically looking to the past, the long ago past, to try to solve present day problems. He's very anti-civilization. So he initiates these very long communiques in the form of emails, which Sadie has managed to break into, and she's able to read them. And she eventually infiltrates this commune to, it seems like, really basically create a lot of chaos. She's like an agent of chaos. She's there to create havoc. But then, okay, so she presents herself as kind of a seductress, but also at the same time, it seems as if Bruno has also seduced her. She also seems to have been seduced by Bruno. So it's an interesting play on her own role, kind of getting flipped on her. And when I say that she seemingly gets seduced by Bruno, she becomes very enthralled or enamored or interested in his writings and his ideas, in the sense that everything else about her is completely detached. I mean, this person doesn't really care about anyone or anything. And it's not often that you read a female character like this. And I don't know, I was very intrigued by her character. She is completely detached. She doesn't seem to have any family, any friends. She is completely a loner, self-sufficient. She probably drinks too much, like she's often drinking beer and smoking cigarettes. But she's beyond cool. She uses sex to get what she wants in terms of advancing her mission, and she is ruthless when it comes to using people. The only thing that seems to get through her hardness or her detachment is these ideas that are being espoused through Bruno's emails. So the thing that gives her her humanity is this interest that she has in Bruno. She becomes very preoccupied with his emails, and I thought that that was very, very interesting. Yes, I really enjoyed this. I really liked how Kushner took the spy character and turned it around in terms of gender and made the kind of hard drinking, rule breaking, untrustworthy spy character. It's not a man, it's a woman. And I know that that's not necessarily something that's not been done before, but the way that she does it is so good. Sadie is so compelling as a character that I think that she was able to carry the book outside of the ideas that Kushner is also presenting to us in terms of civilization versus non-civilization and all of that, which I'm going to stay away from for the purposes of today's video. Not a ton of stuff happens. You have to be prepared for the book to be slow moving in terms of the plot. I think about 100 pages into the novel, even Sadie herself says, I needed to make something happen because nothing is happening in the story except for the initial setup. Be prepared for that. In my view, this book is about Sadie, the main character, more so than it is about necessarily the philosophies that are being presented. It's more about her evolution. And when I say she's being seduced by Bruno's approach or Bruno's writings, she is actually contemplating these ideas and perhaps it's changing her view. And that's what I found really interesting about the story. Because of Bruno's ideas, he is trying to have his followers think differently and think bigger about the way that they're living and the world that we're living in. And Sadie is obviously affected by these ideas. And it takes a character who is very cynical and turns her, or it makes her evolve in a certain way. And I thought that was what was really interesting about Creation Lake, and that's what I really enjoyed about it. Really, it was Sadie for me. That's what made me really enjoy this book. And I think that's what maybe not everyone will take that away from this. Other people will take other things away from this novel, but that's what I really enjoyed about it. So the next book I'm going to talk about is another book that we read for our book club. In fact, we just finished this one off last week. So it's a fairly new book. It's My Friends by Fredrik Backman. This is Fredrik Backman's newest release. The only other book that I've read by Fredrik Backman was Anxious People, and I reviewed it on my channel way back at the beginning of my booktube days. I will just start out with the plot for this one. This one is quite a long book. It's 430 pages. Well, that will be my first issue with this book. I found it was too long. The story basically follows the lives of 4 young people, and their story is told by one of the 4 characters, a man named Ted, and he is telling the story of a summer that they spent together that is depicted in a painting by one of those 4 characters, who is the artist and was Ted's companion, best friend, all the way up until the point where the artist died. It's at this point that he meets a young girl, an 18-year-old girl named Eliza. They find themselves in a situation, which I won't give away, where they're traveling on a train. And so the story goes back and forth from the present day with Ted and Eliza on this train traveling and their little adventure, to him reminiscing and telling stories about him and his 4 friends, one of whom was the artist of the painting that ties everything together. The painting depicts the 4 friends on a dock by the water, and it holds great significance throughout the story. So the story that Ted is telling to Eliza is 25 years later. The 4 friends who are depicted in the painting represent in this novel the us, and the them is represented by the parents, the teachers, the art buyers, these adults in a world of other adults and other people who simply do not understand the us group. And Eliza is in the us group, Ted is in the us group, the 4 friends are in the us group, and the artist is in the us group, and there's another character named Christian who's in the us group. So it's very much set up as an us versus them. It's framed as an us versus them idea, where some people get it and some people don't. And in that way, we, I think, are supposed to interpret the kids as being misunderstood, as artists as being misunderstood or misrepresented in the world, or misunderstood or exploited in the world. And there are a lot of different themes that float around about this, including a teacher who doesn't recognize the talent of the artist, and art buyers who don't see the painting for what it is, but only value it because it's valued in the art market, this sort of thing. The importance of art and the importance of the artists or the artistic ability in people is the focus of this novel, as well as found family or found friendship, family, people who are who understand you, who get you. This is very particular for teenagers, and the 4 teenagers in this story are very close friends, and they're feeling like it's us against the world a little bit. Some of them are, well, actually all of them conveniently, conveniently they all seem to have like either abusive parents or their parents have died, like they're either orphan or they're in abusive situations. A lot of it feels for me, Fredrik Backman, a lot of his writing feels so very contrived to me. This book has a 4.5 rating on Goodreads. Now, mind you, I'm not on Goodreads anymore, and I don't think there's a rating system on Storygraph in the same way. I certainly didn't look it up, but that's a very, very high rating. So I'm sure I'm in the minority when I talk about how I didn't like this book, but it's the kind of writing that just continues to kind of map everything out for you, and I don't want to say beat you over the head because it's a bit extreme, but you know, you're constantly reminded about this dynamic and about how important it is to recognize young people's talent and to encourage them, and just all the way that adults are terrible to teenagers, and it's just it kind of tropey in a way that I found repetitive and tiresome. And I find that Backman's writing, it's not funny in a way that, like, there were parts where it was funny and I laughed, and there were vignettes that I appreciated that I thought were interesting little stories, but there are so many stories told about this summer and the 4 kids and the kind of the pranks that they play. It just, I started to lose interest very early on, and I find his writing to be kind of manipulative, like your emotions are being manipulated all the time. And I'm a little bit vigilant when I read Fredrik Backman now, because that's how I feel about him. I'm not a big fan. I would not pick up a Backman book again if I was choosing, but I'm in a book club and you don't get to choose necessarily. You know, people write in their reviews like heartwarming, witty, heart-wrenching, and to me it just, yeah, I read it and I go, yeah, that's exactly what he wants you to. Anyway, that's just me. There's something about it that feels inauthentic to me, and I'm not saying that it's unoriginal. I think he's just taken parts from different places and put them together. For example, Stephen King's The Body follows the friends who are looking for the body, which is far more interesting because they're actually looking for a body. These 4 kids, we don't really know what it is that is about to happen, and he kind of uses that as a way to keep you reading. Like, you know something bad is going to happen to one of the friends, but you don't know which one, and you don't know how, and you don't know when, and so you keep reading to find that out, but you just keep getting presented with all of these different stories that are like little vignettes, which is also the style of Stephen King's The Body, where he writes, you know, for example, the pie eating contest and the encounter with the dog. In fact, in this book, there is an encounter with a dog as well. And I'm not saying, I'm not pointing any fingers. I thought it was repetitive. It was very slow moving. It's 430 pages. It just felt a little bit endless. It's like he took The Body by Stephen King and he just stretched it out, and then he slapped on the stuff about art on the top. There are also a lot of fart jokes. I don't know, maybe you can have like 1 fart joke, but do we have to have 25 fart jokes? It's a shrug for me. Kind of ridiculous, really unrealistic situations, and a lot of the writing is in a summary format, which I also didn't really like. Unfortunately, this did not work for me at all. For those of you who love Fredrik Backman, you may love this book. Lots of other people love this book. Go ahead, enjoy it. Do not feel bad about enjoying it, but I will not be reading any more Backman unless I'm assigned to do so. The next 2 books I'm going to talk about I really, really enjoyed. We got the one I didn't enjoy out of the way. This one I also read mostly in the reading vlog that I talked about at the beginning of this video, so if you want to go back and check that out. I won't say as much about it here as I did in the vlog. This is Gliff by Ali Smith. This is the first book, I think, maybe in a series of more than 2. I know there's a second one coming out. This is the first time that I've read anything by Ali Smith, and I just really was blown away by her writing. I think her writing is so sharp. There's so much observation, so much packed into each page that gives you enough to think about and chew on. I really, really thought it was fantastic. We're following 2 young siblings. Our narrator, Bree, who is a non-binary teenager, and their sister, Rose, who they find themselves alone. Their mother is responding to some kind of a family emergency with their aunt, and so they leave her in the city and they are staying in a cottage. It's not clear if it's a family friend, and then they're abandoned by their father. I think he's gone off to find money or food or something. But they've found themselves alone. This camper van or this cottage, no, they're with their father in the camper, and what happens is there's a red line that's drawn around the camper, and this has been happening. It's clear that they're living in a totalitarian state, and there are people who are being targeted. People are getting red outlines painted around their homes, and then the homes are being bulldozed, which we learn later in the story. So they know that they have to leave their camper, which is where they're living, and he leaves them at a cottage, ostensibly coming back for them, but we know that he's probably not coming back for them. So they are part of the group called the Unverifiables, which is like a subclass, but for what reasons they're attributed to this subclass, the Unverifiables, is not clear. Like if it's their nationality, if it's their gender, if it's their race, if it's something else, we don't know why. Or it could be that there are moments in the book where people have expressed views that put them into this group. The world in this book is a near future. So it's a near future where technology plays a massive, massive role. And I think that's why this was so compelling for me, because it's inspired by Brave New World. It's like a kind of, I guess, a nod to Brave New World, particularly in the second part of the book. She specifically references Brave New World, which I haven't read since I was in high school. But the role of technology and the way that technology infiltrates the lives of the people in the story is so well presented. And it's very close to the reality. Like it's a very near future situation. So it was a bit chilling. I thought it was very effective at showing the way that technology creates and contributes to dictatorships and autocracy and control and power, and how technology is able to consolidate power in this very specific way where people just become like hubs of data and their decisions are almost dictated to them through technology, which is something that we're really on the verge of right now. So anyway, to get back to the plot, the kids are unverifiables, and they're trying to evade the spy system of the government, the Big Brother effect of their every movement being tracked, and they end up finding another group of people who are also unverifiables, and they meet some other people along the way, including a horse, Gliff, that the story is named after. As unverifiables, they're trying to evade some kind of conclusion that would have them be sucked up into the system. And about halfway through the book, we move from the present time where Rose and Bree are in this situation, and we're 5 years into the future, and Bree is a supervisor in some kind of a manufacturing facility. And a character from Bree's past, we don't know who this character is or what the significance of the character is to Bree, shows up, and that puts Bree on a path of rebellion. So Bree already had kind of a rebellious nature to them, but then there are a lot of holes. We don't know what happened in the 5-year span. We don't know where Bree's sister Rose is, and I think all of those things are going to be filled in the novels that are coming, setting up the elements of the plot for the future books. There were a lot of different messages in this book. There were a lot of things that were very effectively presented, but what I thought was the most interesting was this blurring or disappearing, sort of like the line on the horizon that disappears, the line between when are we still human beings and when do we become technology machines, data centers? When do we lose our human nature to technology? And that way, it was very Kafkaesque. Not to belabor the whole Kafka, but Kafka seems to be everywhere at the moment. And Kafka is actually referred to in this novel by Ali Smith. It's very much similar to the way Kafka's books are about bureaucracy, erasing the individual, whereas in this case, it's not just bureaucracy, it's technology that is erasing the individual in this story. Yes, lots to chew on with this book. Technology being used for good or for evil, I guess, is part of it, but to me it was all about the loss of identity to technology and the loss of personal will and power and autonomy to technology, which is terrifying. Terrifying, but I loved it. The last book that I'm going to talk about is Penance by Eliza Clark. I've never read anything by Eliza Clark before, and wow, this was so good. I know people have been talking about Eliza Clark for such a long time, and I feel like I'm again very slow to jump on the bandwagon, but here we are. I read this with Lori, and it was so good. Several different layers to this novel. It's the story of a young girl named Joni who is bullied by 3 other girls and horrifically dies by being set on fire by these other girls, ostensibly by these other girls. And the novel is written as this meta piece of writing where Clark is writing a novel which is mostly a non-fiction writer writing about this crime as a true crime journalist or a true crime reporter. It is presented in a multimedia format with dialogue from podcasts, with essays, with entries from Tumblr, which at the time the 3 girls were using Tumblr. So it's set in the 90s. It might be the odds. Anyway, Tumblr is the main messaging system that the girls use, and so a lot of entries from Tumblr and dialogue via text between the girls kind of presented as pieces of factual evidence by this nonfiction reporter in the telling of the story. So the story itself takes place one evening in a small seaside town in Britain called Crow. And Joni Wilson, 16, is murdered. As I said, she's actually burned to death by 3 other girls. And this accounting is taking place 10 years later. And it's being told by what we later find out at the very end of the book is a disgraced journalist, and Alex Z. Corelli, who we find out later that there are all kinds of issues with this character, and that he's been sued by different people and the way that he's represented them. And so we find out that he's a morally, if not morally gray, then completely morally corrupt character, which brings us to the whole commentary about true crime and those people who write about true crime, and then ultimately those of us who consume true crime, which I will get to. The fictional accounts that are presented are pieces of writing that were put together but elaborated on about these girls' lives leading up to, for about a year leading up to the murder. And the telling of the story is from the perspective of the 3 girls, girl A, girl B, girl C. And he does interview at the very beginning Joni's mother, but the big issue with that is that Joni is not really presented, or she doesn't really have a voice. So nothing about the story is from her experience or from her point of view, because of course she's dead and we can't speak to the dead, so we don't know. We only hear the story from the points of view of the people who knew the person, who knew the victim. I think is really important because, of course, for all true crime stories, that is the way. And often the focus is not on the victim, but it's on the killers. And in this case, the focus is on the 3 girls. How could they do such a thing? What the hell was going on? And how do we understand how these 3 girls could have done something like this? A lot of different layers. First layer being how much of this is true? How how much of this is embellished, how much of it is true. Second layer, this isn't told from the perspective of the victim. We don't know anything really about the victim except for what we learn about the victim from the perpetrators, which is not going to be a fair presentation of the victim. So that criticism of true crime, the idea that it's unfair to the victim and the victim is often victimized again, and the families of the victims are often victimized again. And then we have the whole sensationalization of true crime, and this one in particular is a very sensational crime because of the type of death, and it's exploited for that reason. He specifically says this was such a, such a violent crime and so unusual that I had to pursue the story. So the sensational aspect of true crime. And then, of course, that leads us back around to how much of this is embellished, how much of this is true. Yeah, it was very, very smart. Another layer that I thought was really disturbing but also very interesting is how little we actually know and understand about the lives of teenagers and how truly dramatic life as a teenager is. There's one point in the story where one of the girls' mothers takes away her plug where she plugs in her computer, like I guess it's the cord for plugging in her computer, and it's like 1 at night, and she takes the plug away and she says, no, you have to go to bed, you can't be online for that long. And the girl just has a replacement cord, so she just plugs in the replacement cord and she gets right back online. And then on Tumblr, there are a lot of fan sites on Tumblr or fan blogs on Tumblr that idolize these two boys who were involved in a school shooting, very similar to the boys from the Columbine shooting, and sort of the idolization of these characters who perpetuate these horrendous murders and these horrendous crimes. And then, of course, we go right back around to the whole idea of the sensationalization of these crimes and the celebrity that people and attention that people who commit these crimes that are very sensational get, and how do we play a role in that as consumers of true crime, and the people who make money making documentaries or making books about true crime. There's this altruistic idea that it's about justice for the victims, but the fascination that we have with these crimes is often a fascination for the perpetrators of the crime, and it's their story that is focused on. So yeah, so much to chew on with this one. I watched Adolescence around the same time as finishing this book, and it reminded me a lot, the idea about like the iceberg where we only see what's above the surface, and then below the surface these kids' lives have all this stuff going on beneath the surface. And it reminded me of the conversation that the cop has with his son, where his son is trying to explain to him what the different emojis mean, like the different colored heart emojis and the red pill emoji, and what do those symbols mean to teenagers, and his dad has absolutely no idea. That same kind of thing is presented here in terms of the world on Tumblr that the kids are a part of, that the grown-ups have not a clue about. It was an amazing book. What an amazing writer, and just so thought-provoking. I really highly recommend it. I'm sure if you've been watching other booktubers, you will have heard them say fantastic things about Eliza Clark, and I couldn't agree more. I really want to read Boy Parts, but I've heard that this is better than Boy Parts. So if you've read Boy Parts, let me know in the comments section below what you thought of it. Actually, let me know about any of these books if you read them, what you thought of them, and yeah, say hi in the comments if you want to. I haven't been on for a while. I'm really happy to be back. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye for now. Louise or Eliza? And this book is about 3 women who work together or come together to, well, they don't really come together, do they? Actually, 2 of the books that I'm talking about today, I include included in this reading vlog, so I will leave it linked in. So I'm going to start with two books that were on the Carol Shields. I'm going to start with two books that were on the Carol Shields Prize long list, and then I'm going to talk about